Hamas leaders meeting in Doha thought they were under the protection of Qatar's diplomatic shield. On September 9, 2025, that illusion shattered as Israeli missiles lit up the sky. Witnesses described smoke pouring across embassy-lined streets. The U.S. Embassy ordered Americans to shelter in place. Israel called it precise justice for October 7, but Qatar called it a violation of sovereignty. Was this attack a military strike or a political message to the world? By the end of this video, you'll see what each player hoped to gain and what they risked losing. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Israel said the strike in Doha was about precise justice, but if it was only about eliminating Hamas figures, the results don't fully line up with that explanation. Officials in Jerusalem described the attack as a clean operation against senior commanders, who, according to them, orchestrated killings of Israeli civilians. They took immediate responsibility, emphasizing it was a direct response to the bloodshed last October and presenting it as the execution of a calculated countermeasure rather than an escalation. Their narrative painted the strike as deliberate, limited, and justified under the banner of self-defense. In this telling, the missiles were aimed not at Doha itself, but at the shadow network Hamas uses to guide its campaign from abroad. Yet when reports came out that the very men Israel claimed to be targeting walked away alive, questions multiplied. Eyewitnesses in the city described the blast zones shaking entire embassy-lined districts, with glass shattering along diplomatic compounds where multiple embassies are clustered. Instead of accounts of pinpoint arrests or surgical assassinations, residents described smoke clouds rising over one of the most carefully secured neighborhoods in Doha. Hamas quickly announced that its leadership had survived, which cast immediate doubt on Israel's claim of a perfectly executed hit. The contradiction between Israel's stated goals and the on-the-ground reality fueled speculation that the stated justification was masking other motives. Netanyahu's office doubled down in statements afterwards, stressing that the strike had been carried out with complete independence, no outside hand guiding it. That assertion was striking in itself because it implied a political choice to strike in Doha, the capital of the very country hosting ongoing mediation talks. Qatar, until that moment, had positioned itself as one of the central actors negotiating between Hamas, Israel, and international players. By choosing that city as the battleground for a targeted killing, Israel knowingly created a diplomatic crisis in what had been a neutral arena. It wasn't just a shot at Hamas, it was a strike into the heart of Qatar's claim to neutrality. The reaction inside Qatar only underlined this. Officials called the strike a blatant violation of sovereignty, a direct insult as much as an attack. Foreign ministers warned that negotiations already hanging by a thread could collapse entirely if Doha could no longer guarantee the safety of participants. Observers noted the potential collapse of talks involving prisoner exchanges and ceasefire discussions. A single attack now risked breaking months of slow, fragile progress built through diplomacy. Adding to the sense of game playing were conflicting casualty reports. Some outlets spoke of 5 killed, others mentioned 6. Among them were believed to be Hamas operatives, but also possibly a Qatari security officer who was not a combatant. These shifting numbers gave the impression of carefully managed narratives rather than straight reporting, a fog of conflicting stories masking inconvenient truths. For Qatar, the ambiguity was another injury. Its own personnel seemed to have been caught up in an operation supposedly targeted with precision. So what did Israel actually gain by opening this front in Doha? By striking where they did, they risked alienating a country that had been a conduit for negotiations. They sparked outrage across the Gulf, and they escalated tension in a city where American and European security interests are heavily concentrated. If avoiding alienation was the goal, the calculus doesn't add up. Analysts suggested the answer lies beyond revenge. For Israel, this was an extrajudicial message not only to Hamas leaders huddled in safe houses, but to the entire region. If Hamas thought geography would protect them, Israel made clear it could reach them anywhere. By striking in Doha, Israel projected strength on 2 levels: a military reminder of operational reach and a diplomatic warning of who really sets the terms on the battlefield and at the table. This was signaling designed to reorder negotiations by proving that safe havens were illusions. But Israel's message wasn't the only one transmitted that night. Far away from the blast sites in Washington, the U.S. response revealed another layer of strategy, one centered not on missiles, but on managing appearances. U.S. officials acknowledged they had been given a heads-up about the strike in Doha, but the details stopped there. They insisted that Washington was merely informed and had no part in shaping or authorizing what went down that night. At first glance, that sounds like a routine diplomatic exchange, an ally letting another ally know a risky move is about to happen. But if the United States truly wanted nothing to do with it, why even go public with that acknowledgement? Admitting to advance notice creates new questions, especially in a region where American presence is so visible. The official line came quickly after the explosions were reported. The White House emphasized that the decision was Israel's alone and that Washington had neither encouraged nor joined in the planning. That phrasing aimed to shield American leadership from blame while maintaining the appearance of open communication with Israel. But the denial did not erase the ripple effects on the ground. Almost immediately, American diplomatic sites across the Middle East raised their security postures. In Doha, the U.S. Embassy reportedly locked down, with staff ordered indoors and reinforced security controls at checkpoints. Such rapid defensive measures hinted at an expectation of retaliation, a sign that U.S. officials may have received more detailed warning than they publicly admitted. The former president himself went on record stressing that Netanyahu had acted independently, that public distancing was calculated. Had America looked too close to the planning table, the strike could have triggered backlash not only from Qatar, but from Arab capitals across the Gulf, where U.S. aircraft and personnel are stationed in large numbers. By placing the decision in Netanyahu's hands alone, Washington could avoid responsibility if tensions escalated, while still signaling its broader sympathy for Israel's actions. Analysts pointed out that this kind of balancing act is not unusual. For decades, Washington has walked a tightrope between supporting Israel's security agenda and keeping ties with Arab partners intact. The distinction between informed and involved gave room to maneuver in both directions. On one level, American assets were visibly protected. Troops at Al Udeid Air Base, one of the largest U.S. installations in the world, had to be safeguarded against potential reprisals. On another level, distancing language allowed officials to tell Arab partners they bore no responsibility for what had just shattered Doha's diplomatic quarter. Still, the geography of the strike raised eyebrows. The missiles landed only a short drive from American aircraft hangars, radar sites, and runways packed with U.S. fighter jets. Could Israel have carried out the strike without tacit coordination to ensure no American planes or patrols were in the wrong place at the wrong time? Some regional experts argued that total ignorance is unlikely. Even if the United States had no role in authorizing the operation, the timing and location suggest that American commanders would have demanded clarification to keep their forces out of harm's way. If Israel flexed its reach with explosions in Doha and the United States shielded itself with careful words, what followed in Qatar showed how fragile sovereignty becomes the moment those calculations cross its borders. Israel framed the strike as justice delivered. The United States positioned itself as a cautious observer. Qatar cast itself as a violated mediator, and Hamas portrayed survival as proof of resilience. Each narrative shaped how the world interpreted the explosions in Doha. But when stories clash this sharply, the truth often lies buried beneath competing agendas. That's why questioning official statements is essential, because every version of events is built to serve a purpose. In conflicts like this, the rockets matter less than the narrative. The louder battle is over which the story becomes the one the world believes.